All right, folks, we are going to get the ball rolling this evening. Welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Jack O'Brien, your host, and we are really excited to talk all things digital innovation in allied health. I have with me tonight our esteemed guest and co-host with me, Henrik Molin from Physitrack. Good evening or good morning, Henrik. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just waiting for the esteemed guest to join.
Your audio's not going to come through there just yet. So if you want to get that sorted out for us, that would be super. As you do that, we're going to make everyone feel welcome. If you just want to check your audio there, mate, that would be good. Still nothing coming through.
There we go.
You'll get it, I'm sure. For those who aren't familiar, my name is Jack O'Brien. If we haven't met before, my role is helping clinic owners. And so I spend my days helping over 570 clinic owners now to move from struggling to clarity or poised, who are ready to go with the strategy that they need to grow. And so in and through this COVID season, helping clinics reopen, regrow, and really make a difference and amplify their impact. So I'm a physio clinic owner and also one of the directors of Clinic Mastery. All right, Henrik, we have your audio here coming through now. That's awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your role with Physitrack as the CEO and co-founder?
Yeah, well, so thank you again, Jack. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you on these things. And I think feedback was really, really nice after we did the last podcast. So I'm grateful to be invited back. CEO and co-founder, that doesn't really mean anything. I think at Physitrack, we're jacks of all trades, and we do a lot of things. But my main task at Physitrack is really the commercial side, to make sure that we can grow and that we can sustain growth in the different geos and the different verticals where we're active. So, but no, that's it. I mean, we're a learning organization. We learn a lot about what we should be doing by listening to customers. And one of the big things that I do is to listen to feedback from usually very large providers, and then we try to capture what they need in terms of development. And that's the process where I co-architect and co-design some of the solution, but it's mostly the commercial side.
I love it. And I think you have such a unique perspective to bring to clinic owners tonight, given your visibility across so many thousand clinics in different countries and different situations, and your personal previous experience in digital tech and allied health is super relevant for clinic owners. So really excited to explore Henrik's expertise with you all joining us tonight. Just to make sure this is all coming through, if you could jump in the chat panel for me, folks playing along at home or the clinic, just to let me know your name and where you're from, what suburb, maybe what country you're from. Would love to know over in the chat panel whereabouts in the world you are coming to us from. That would be amazing. As you do that, I'm going to run you through a little bit of background before we dive into 6 key areas, lessons and learning when it comes to digital innovation in allied health with Henrik. We know that there are 4 types of clinic owners that, and for the astute playing along at home, you'll see that there are 5 levels there. But we know that peak mastery it's a lifelong unattainable pursuit of mastery that we never get to, but there are 4 levels: the player, practitioner, professional, and performer. And often the players are those solos or startups just dipping their toe. Maybe they stumbled into clinic ownership and they're just having a go. And that might be you playing along at home tonight or watching this webinar on recording. The next level up of practitioners are those doing what they know. They've learned a little bit about business and they're having a go, and they've maybe got a couple of team members. They're helping more people than they can help themselves, and they've got a team to be able to do that. And the level up is a professional, and they're not just doing what they know, but they know what to do. And they're really executing at a high level when it comes to team. They may be looking at multi-sites and helping a couple of hundred, maybe even a couple of thousand community members per week. And those that are performers are really crushing it when it comes to clinic ownership and business ownership. So tonight, I want you to think about where you sit on the clinic owner spectrum there. And I'll have a squiz here. We've got David from Melbourne, Iona from Gawler, Ali in Canberra, MK, hey, MK from Melbourne. Sadiq from Nigeria and currently in the UK. Super. So good to have so many people joining us on here live. And I know that there'll be plenty of people watching the replay tonight. So really pumped to have you joining us. We also know that when it comes to clinic ownership, that there are 7 degrees to mastery. And so tonight we'll be focusing a lot on the systems element and how digital can really play a role in innovating and growing your clinic. But in essence, it transcends across your brand, the experience that you provide for patients, some of the financial scalability and efficiencies, and obviously the team plays such a role. But there are 7 degrees to effectively growing your clinic and leading and mastering your clinic. So worth thinking about that as the filter for tonight. Now, before we dive into Henrik's content and asking, we'll put him under the microscope. I want to set and make sure that we know the rules for the game. How do we play in a webinar space tonight? So what I want you to think about is look for the marginal gains. If we skip down to the 4th level there will be some monumental shifts. And as we go through coronavirus and the different challenges that affront us here in 2020, don't think so much about the monumental gains as much as the marginal gains. And if we zip back to the top of that list there, we're not looking for changes that we can make as soon as possible, but more so we're after the changes we can make as sustainably as possible. Speed matters, but sustainability matters more. And so looking for the 1, 2, 3 things, make sure you've got your pen or your phone taking notes. Look for the marginal gains that you can make as sustainably as possible. Make sure you run things through your filter. It's going to be different for your profession, your location, and your situation. So run things through your personal filter. And we want to make sure that today is as practical as possible. And so there will be some guarantees towards the end. We want to guarantee absolutely that there is next day implementation. You'll learn things today that you can implement tomorrow. And we're really proud of the fact that we can bring some practical guidance for you today. And finally, I want you to think about engagement, contribution, and focus. If you can put aside the devices, put them on silent, do not disturb, put them away from you, and focus. Close down the other tabs and browsers if you've got them, and give us the next 45 minutes of focus. Will enable you to set yourself up for the coming weeks and months. So make sure you're focused. Make sure you're here to contribute, not just consume. If you're here just to consume, you'll end up educated beyond your level of execution. And so tonight, let's not just come for education, but let's come for contribution. When Henrik and I ask for your contribution, please jump into the chat box and ask your questions and respond appropriately. We'd really appreciate that. And make sure that you engage. You'll find in Zoom a raise hand button, and there's also a chat and Q&A. So there'll be time at the end for Q&A. Make sure you use the Q&A feature for Q&A, the chat for chat, and raise the hand to let us know. Actually, if you could do that now, if you could find the raise hands if you're watching live and pop your hand up, that would be super. Thank you, Diana, David, Alison, Winter, Shan, Scott, Marike, Melissa, Letitia, fantastic, Tim. Awesome. So we've found the raise hand feature. I like it. Thank you for doing so. I'm going to pop your hands back down there now. Good. So we're after engagement. Let's contribute and let's focus, and you'll get the best out of the next 45 minutes or so that we have here together. All right. Henrik, I've got a couple of questions for you. So coronavirus, we're now, depending on which part of the world you're in, we're somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks into COVID-19. And you run quite a large and what has now become a pivotal organization software for so many clinics. I'd love to know, how have you fared? How are you going?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. I think most people on the call knows that we do remote patient engagement, and it makes it possible for a healthcare provider to work with patients that they don't see face to face. And so that description alone gives you a bit of a clue as to how much need there was for a product like Physitrack during this period when you can't see all of a sudden your patient face to face. And on top of that, we also happen to have a telehealth solution built into the system that we have had since 2016, but it's specialized for the physiotherapy profession. So you can not only engage people remotely by prescribing exercises and do things offline. We also had something that made it possible to do things in real time. So when I say we had an extreme product market fit in the lockdown situation, that's probably the accurate description of this.
Yeah.
And so what concretely happened to us as we did this, first of all, we felt that we wanted to give something back. We realized quite quickly that a lot of smaller clinic owners would be in a challenge situation where they would very quickly have to step up and provide remote care. And what we thought we'd do in that scenario was to make it easy for them by providing telehealth for free during a part of the COVID period.
Right.
And so we communicated that widely. So individual account owners, we would help them just to get up to speed with telehealth so that they can introduce this new remote engagement methodology at with no financial barrier. And so that in combination with that extreme product market fit led to, for me, the most intense business period in my whole life. And so we grew the equivalent of 1 year, actually 180% of 1 year in about 6 weeks.
Wow.
And so we saw every day at its peak in the third week of March, almost 2,000 new customers a day.
Wow.
And this is so that's to the tune of I'd say 60 to 100 times more than we would normally get. So the telehealth platform went almost overnight from being used by a few dozen enterprise customers that have call centers to be used globally, and a very wide range of users, from the one-person companies to the mega enterprises with thousands of users. So it was a very overwhelming experience for us overall from a business perspective. Let's see if I can steal your screen for a second. I'll put that into perspective.
Sure.
So I pulled some stats for it. Obviously, that's what the solution looks like. But we walked into what you see here, and the usage you see here, about 100,000 programs in a week, 100,000 remote telehealth sessions. And so it was an extreme boost. And we had to go through that with, because it just happened so quickly. So we went through that with the existing team. And I can show you what the team looks like after a couple of weeks of this. It's a very tired, but very happy team.
They look very tired.
Most of us only slept for 4 to 5 hours a night during the most intense first couple of weeks. And,
so what are some of those leadership lessons then? If you're navigating a tired, stressed team, what are some of those insights for us?
Well, in summary, I mean, if you go through something like this, I can touch on a few things here. When something like this happens, you're stuck with the organization that you have. You're stuck with the processes that you do have. It's kind of like when the tide goes out, who's not wearing pants or trousers, as you would say in Australia, parts of Australia. But in our case, it was like a big wave crashing in, and we had to figure out if we could swim, yes, or if we could swim freestyle rather than a nice casual breaststroke. So everything about your business that's not perfect is going to be visible, and it's going to be very fast, because every process, every component, and every team member will have 100 times more pressure on it. It's hard to make big changes. And then further to your direct question there, communication is really key. So if you have a good team that has potential to manage something like this, you have to make sure you have structured communication and ways for the team to not only communicate with you as a founder and as an owner, they also have to be able to communicate amongst themselves. They have to be able to read one another. They have to be able to collaborate. So whatever you implemented in your team prior to something like this is what you are going to be stuck with when things go crazy. Right. And for us, we were very lucky. We had a pretty tight process in place. We were virtual to begin with. I think a lot of people know that we never had a physical office anywhere. People can work from home or they can work in remote offices. So a lockdown situation was, almost normal for us in terms of, we already had the setup that we needed. We had various ways of communicating. We have WhatsApp groups for communications for the whole team, for groups inside of the team, and for specific projects. So it was business as usual in terms of communication and interaction. And even if we put that much pressure on it, it didn't change much in terms of these processes. Mm-hmm. What did change, though, and which is important for everybody's health and well-being and performance, is that we had to communicate more. So we had to use these channels more. So, for instance, I provided an hourly update on subscriptions on growth. I mean, some of the charts that you saw there, I would push that out to the team so that we know what we were up against and what we could expect in terms of flow to the support team, to the sales team. I used to update us once a week, for example.
So it was now hourly.
It was hourly, and at some point, you start getting 10 an hour, you get 20 an hour, all of a sudden it jumps to 50, and then it starts jumping to 100 and 200, and it goes on like that for 24 hours straight. That's when you know that you're there, because there's a lag between the sign up activity or the subscription activity and the speed at which people become clients to the flow of work for us. Sure. Meaning support queries and people asking questions or needing help in one shape or form. So preempting flow, at some point it was just so much. So we were just in a perfect storm the whole time. But we stepped up communication a lot, and obviously so we didn't do anything differently. We just did it more frequently, and obviously the times of day where we stayed online would be much longer, and so everybody went all in. It's an amazing team that we have, and everybody stayed online, and it was even hard to tell people that it's very late where you are now. You should really go to bed and catch on sleep, because the craziness will continue tomorrow as well. But communication is really, really key. And then lastly, obviously, as a founder, so Physitrack was founded by my dear friend Nathan Squatshov, and we increased comms as well. Normally we would have a stand-up. We have a global weekly stand-up where we go through the whole organization from top to bottom, and we speak intermittently during the day or during the week. But during this, we started doing stand-ups at 6 a.m. So every morning at 6 a.m. We would get online. We would get an update on what had happened overnight, what issues, what had come up, and we'd make the key decisions, analysis and decisions. So every single morning for about I'd say 3 weeks, we did that with a lot of the big stuff. So yeah, there was a lot to learn here.
That's fantastic. I think there's some good parallels for clinic owners in and through that. The increase in team communications, getting your directors or your leadership team on the same page. There is the volume of support that you were receiving was probably similar to a lot of clinic owners receiving cancellations or questions and managing some of those hygiene and sanitation challenges in and through here. So we're going to dive into some of those key lessons that you've learned. But I think what I'm interested in is clinic owners. Is there something that you can pull? So jump into the chat and let us know, what's your key learning so far out of that? As Henrik has explained what's happened to Physitrack, what's your key learning as to how he brought control to an uncertain situation? So jump in the chat and let us know what your key learning is there. Henrik, let's talk about learnings from growth. What I'm predicting, and we had a bunch of training events for different professions last week, around May will be the time for clinics to grow. May, June, July, 3-month period will be a key period of growth. So you've already had a spike in growth. What can we learn from you going through that growth spurt?
Yeah, so again, going back to what I was saying about the tide going out and you see who's not wearing pants. In a similar way, when you come in, there'll be pent-up demand for physiotherapy. surgeries will get going again. There's pent-up demands for those. Hopefully, our wonderful healthcare workers and doctors and surgeons will be able to get to work on that quickly. So supply will be abundant very quickly, I think. And for you as a business, again, it's very important that you come back to the key processes and the considerations and the workflow that you have had previously. And now is probably the time to look at that and to polish it and to see how that would come into play in a new normal, because for a number of weeks things will move very, very fast, similar to what happened to us. And I think it's very important that whatever culture and processes and infrastructure you have had, now's the time to take a look at that, to see how that can come into play. And again, communication, workflow with the team, just make sure it's structured and you have ways for your team to communicate to you. If people have been furloughed, I think it's important to stay in touch with them, to have them ready to roll when it's time to come back in. And if you have good lines of communication, if you had that prior to this and people are still following, I think now's the time to try to reactivate that, because you can potentially come into a situation that's quite overwhelming.
Right.
And then lastly here, I think you need to approach what you're coming into as a new normal. So if you come into something now thinking that it will blow over in a few months' time or a few weeks' time, then you might be cutting some corners and setting expectations to the team, especially, that might be unrealistic. And so if you're telling people, you know what, this is just not going to continue for long, let's overwork ourselves, let's just try to do as much as we can with the existing team, that might be the wrong decision. So I think it's better to try to adapt to what will be a new normal than to wait for things to blow over. So, and I think a key thing here is to listen very carefully to what your team tells you and what they perceive things to be, what they will need when they come back in your situation, and when you're in the middle of it, if they do ask for additional resources, additional headcounts and so on. I recognize it might not be so easy if you've been in sort of a lighter business mode, if you had to rely mostly on remote engagement via telehealth, etc., and then you have a part of your business is gone in terms of revenue. But it's quite important to try to come into a surge with a ready team and the good resources, because chances are you might have to give back business or turn down business, which is probably not an optimal thing to do. Now, in terms of communication, just sticking to that for a second, communicating more during hard times is usually a good strategy. And so I've seen several people on this call have been very active on social media, and they've really been good at communicating that. They are here, they are ready, they provide remote care if needed, and that's something that's going to be remembered by a lot of patients when it's time to come back for the hands-on care. So I'd say rather communicate more when times are tough than communicate less, and that goes with customers and also with the team.
I absolutely think you're spot on when it comes to both. You got to think communication with team and with customers. And I love that you've also touched on the different modalities of online and sort of written, whether that's WhatsApp or Slack or an email to your patients, as well as video, and that multimodal method of communication is really key, right? It sounds like you're doing daily stand-ups or hourly stand-ups and broadcast to your team via video, and the asynchronous written communication, right?
Correct. So it's always a combination. Back to the learnings that I had from my dad during various crises that we went through in the world. I remember the first Gulf War, where the travel business, I come from the travel business, that was my family. He stepped up advertising and communication during a period where competitors would step down and reduce exposure and reduce spend on advertising. He increased it. And as such, when the crisis was over, he became more dominant in the market, and he had more business come out of that because so he took market share from his competitors by being more communicative. And so I think that's always something worth thinking about when times are tough. Be more visible, and I certainly see that from a lot of our customers. There's some fantastic creative social media posts, and I see even when you see paper advertising in dailies. Advertising digital, there you come full circle. So some very interesting initiatives that I think will pay off big time, not just for the direct provision of care, which is now via telehealth, but also when people do come back into swinging things and it's time for hands-on again.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Being visible, it creates that certainty that we're talking about. When people feel uncertain, they look for certainty. They look for something that's stable. And us as clinic owners being visible is a great distinction. So I love that, mate. Thank you. We're going to keep moving through. Let's talk about mistakes. So there were some really important learnings. How did you know you were making mistakes, and how did you correct them?
Well, of course, there are many mistakes. I mean, I have to say, my team has been absolutely amazing. So and my co-founder as well, just getting through a long period with very little sleep and just to having to make decisions and to answer in a coherent way. Is of course that there have been many little micro mistakes. Now, I'd say for the business, in retrospect, we should probably have thought of a few things earlier in terms of this infrastructure and some of the padding. I mean, a perfect example is we didn't really have a dedicated marketing page for telehealth, and so we had it as part of the offering. It was a periphery in the offering, and it was just an add-on to the overall solution. And then we just realized that I think day 2 or something like, maybe we should have a page for telehealth just to tell them about, it's government funded partly, and then we've had it in play for 4 years. It's not something that came up in just a space of a few days. So we thought that maybe we should put some of these key things together. Now it sounds pretty easy, but if you haven't slept for a few days and you're doing that at 6 a.m., then you probably just want to cry. I believe we put together some of the last coffee at like 6:45 on the Monday or the Tuesday morning after we did that big free telehealth for small practitioners. We got it into play, and luckily my co-founder Nate is one of the best UI UX designers and web page builders on the planet. So we went through that together, and we had it up and running very quickly. And other stuff like we didn't even have a paywall in terms of small companies being able to pay for telehealth at some point when we come out of COVID, because this was mainly an enterprise product. The telehealth product is an enterprise product. We have a manual invoicing process in place. So that's pretty scary as you open the floodgates and you see all this traffic. And we pay for every single minute of telehealth or the provision of the video streams to Dolby, it's a partner in the telehealth company. So as these things start to raise, you start to realize that, hang on a minute, we're going to have to, at some point, we have to switch off the free and start charging. And we actually didn't have the infrastructure to do that. And so so that's some of those things. But to be honest, I mean, you look at it from a tactical and a strategic perspective. I'd say from a strategic perspective, we were spot on, because already in 2016, we saw where telehealth was going to go. It was going to be a thing at some point, and we knew that we needed a telehealth solution that did something specific for the rehab space. And so we had more than 3 years of usage in it once it went big. And of course, already at an early stage, we sort of split the business in two spaces, in two parts in terms of client focus. So it was enterprise and small to mid-size, and made it possible to allocate team resources between these two efforts. And two parallel tracks in terms of monetization, which at the end of the day, it's very important because the telehealth technology is actually very expensive for us to run. But very early on, we wanted to maintain the free for the really vulnerable entrepreneurs, so the small guys, but enterprises still had to pay for it. And so we had that strategic play in place from the start. And of course, tactically we made a lot of mistakes, or we didn't analyze things fast enough, or sometimes things don't come to you very well at 6:45 a.m. But one of the things that we didn't figure out was that how important call diagnostics were, meaning the ability to test your setting, which I failed at even going on to this Zoom webinar. I didn't have the mic settings correct. We didn't realize how important they were and how different they would be, because we used to work with enterprises. And so enterprises, they have these call centers, they have IT support teams, they all have the same hardware, they have stable internet, and all of a sudden you have a lot of different people that come on and use your solution, and they could be working from home with a private internet connection, and their wife is streaming. I think Amazon Prime, we had an email from somebody that said that it's really strange at 3 p.m. your solution gets a bit choppy. And then we asked, is it possible maybe that somebody's streaming something? And she said, you know what, that's a good question. My wife starts streaming Amazon Prime at 3 p.m. and as soon as she stopped, the call was stable. So you have this opaque hardware park with thousands and thousands of people around the world. And of course you have stuff on the patient end as well. People don't have people might not have the latest equipment. You might have elderly patients that never ever did a video call, and so there's so many things that can go wrong before you even go on a call. And I think we underestimated the importance of those tools, and that's, in retrospect, that should have been one of the first things that we thought about. Like you have the telehealth solution in your face, and if you can see yourself and you can see that the little bar on the microphone is moving, that that things are going to work, and you know that before you get into a call. So that was one of the mistakes, I'd say.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think as we think about what you mentioned at the start, having no paywall, having all these users, and then how do we charge them and make this commercial? I think about a lot of clinic owners, and probably they were walking by this mantra up on the wall here of progress over perfection. Let's just do telehealth because we overwhelmingly we want to help people. And yet we didn't think about the commercial realities of how is this going to be funded, or have we used perhaps a less secure platform and we need to move then over to something like Physitrack that has all the privacy and security features. And so, like you mentioned, having those diagnostics in place and the quality checking and quality assurance was a key learning for you. And I think clinic owners, as we navigate now through this, like Henrik said, that this new normal, or at least it'll be normal for the next 3 to 6 months for us, how can you make sure that it is progress over perfection, but there is an element of mastery at play? It's kind of this duality of progress and mastery at the same time, and that there's quick feedback loops. That's really what you're referring to, right? When you're saying the diagnostics and checking for problems, is we need to be having our finger on the pulse quickly. And what tech or what tools, what systems and automation would you as a clinic owner have in place to make sure that you've got your finger on the pulse for if and when things do go wrong? That's awesome, Henrik. I'm interested, Pete. Folks, jump in the chat again. And that's 3 things that we've touched on there now. We've touched on how Physitrack handled COVID-19. We've touched on what were the key growth areas and learnings from growth, and some of the key mistakes that were made, how we knew them, and how we were able to deal with them. So jump in the chat. Let us know what your learning is so far. We know that when you write these down, it cements it, and you then end up with actions off the back of it. So jump in the chat and let us know what your key learning is there that will help you move from uncertain to under control. So if we just zoom out a little bit here now, Henrik, what worked and what didn't? I'm sure you were throwing everything and trying so many different things. What went well, what didn't, and therefore what can we as clinic owners learn from your experience?
Yeah, and we actually got a little feedback here from one of them saying, "Be ready," which is true. It's a lot about preparation and just having something that normally works, and if you're lucky, the new normal with a different kind of business and a different kind of volume will get you a long way. move towards perfection by monitoring your actions. Yes, of course, constantly. And this is back to the 6 a.m. stand-ups with me and my poor co-founder that some days we didn't like each other very well, but you still have to go through it. And you have to just really think about, what did we not think about today? What do we need to just twist and turn to make this work? What worked and what didn't for us? Well, obviously that's an extreme product market fit. It happened very quickly. So we had something that was there for the moment. It was tried and tested. It was used very widely. So it was an easy decision for a lot of people to go with us when the situation happened. And we were quite known in the market as well. So as you guys know, we were quite widely used in Australia for home access prescription, etc. So what I do think we did well as a company was to have some great processes. And back to that, great communication and a team that wasn't afraid to ask for things. And I think what we did well, and we talked about this in the last podcast that we did, 2 co-founders I think are quite important, because you have somebody that you can bounce things with. And it also helps if you're friends, because you can go through the process of just being very systematic. It's easy to do that when you're 2 people challenging each other and and you can pick each other up. They weren't great days for either of us, and it's very stressful sometimes. And my co-founder just had a baby as well throughout this, and so it was stressful to begin with from a personal perspective. And it helps that you're close friends, because then you can recognize some of those things. You can recognize a shift in tone, and you can adjust a bit, and you can help pick each other up, and take each other down if we get upset or if we get angry, which inevitably happens. But being 2 co-founders, I think, is something that we did that right, and I think it's something that's quite important. And for a clinic, if you're a sole founder, then maybe it's good to have somebody that you can elevate a little bit to a level where you have somebody to bounce things with, especially when things go crazy. This is where you'll welcome a voice of reason, or somebody that challenges you, or somebody that tells you to shut the hell up when you're really upset and you're stressed, and you try to focus on the business. And I think it's good to know your co-founder very well. And again, in extreme times, you become aware of things that are not perfect, and you will pay the price at some point if you haven't started the company with the right person.
Well, on that point, what are some relational keys that you and Nate have had in place, or is there any rules for your relationship, permissions, or anything like that you've given each other?
We have had a long-standing rule with each other that we would not call each other from whenever we felt the urge. We would try to, first of all, just check if the other person is available. So we just send a little ping over, because you want to make sure that maybe one of the 2 partners they're sitting and they're doing something that's important, and that you need that concentration. I disobey that rule quite a lot. Nate has a big need to just stay in his bubble and to focus on things, especially when it comes to architecture and design. But I think certain rules like that are important. I think between 2 co-founders, though, it's less of an issue, because especially if you're friends, you kind of know that if you pick up the phone, it means it's something important, or you get on those 6 a.m. stand-ups, and it's okay to say that I don't feel great this morning, or I didn't sleep all night because my baby was crying, or whatever else it is. I think it's less important for founders. I think for a team, I think it's important to have some rules in place in terms of first of all, interaction, and how you want messaging traffic to come back and forth, and also to try to stick to. And we have to remind the team about this as well. The craziness continues tomorrow as well. So you need to sleep. You need to take a break to eat. At some point it was ridiculous where we had to tell people, go out and exercise. just take a break, that the opportunity is going to be there. You're not going to miss anything. Nobody's going to hate you for it. But just have that camaraderie and that ability to read each other and to have certain base rules in place, like eat, sleep, exercise, personal life. That will always come first, and it's very important to prioritize.
Awesome, mate. It's such a key in chaos. You need to be able to depend on your partner for sure. Was there anything else that comes to mind in terms of what worked?
Well, the learning bit, and and this is where I think that we could have learned faster, especially about this hardware situation, that it was just so opaque in terms of old Windows machines versus Macs versus external microphones versus headsets. And I don't think we learned fast enough that because of the enterprise situation that we were in for selling telehealth, that the diagnostic was so important. So I think we didn't learn fast enough. But the key word here is to learn from your customers, learn from your team. And that the team is in a position where they are encouraged and they are empowered to teach you things and to lead you. And the customers should always, at the end of the day, then your customer will always know what they need from you. And your job is to figure that out and to build and deliver that. And so learning is really, really key.
It's awesome. And that loops back to your communication point at the start. From a super practical perspective, folks, in our clinic, we have a number of different Slack channels regarding COVID sanitation guidelines, COVID government guidelines, and telehealth. And so our team still are constantly providing feedback in there to go, this is what's working when it comes to Physitrack, and this is what's working with regarding to communications that we're sending out via our practice management software. This is what's not working. And so that rapid, constant, never-ending improvement is really critical. And what I found in my experience working with hundreds of clinic owners is that those who left too big a gap, like you say, that the time between learnings, and that gap is too big, so much can fall through that crack. So shortening the learning gap is absolutely critical. I love it, mate. Let's keep on rolling here. So let's touch on your personal experiences. We know, and for those that missed, we'll link up after this. We'll send out the link to the podcast that Henrik and I have done previously. But you've had such a broad range of personal and professional experiences. How did that put you in stead to handle COVID-19?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I've been through some extreme times during especially my trading days. I was on the trading desk when 9/11 hit, and you had to make a lot of fast decisions to protect your fund and your positions and your portfolio. I think there's nothing that comes close professionally to what we went through, because business-wise, in terms of the number of decisions and the complexity and the speed of it, it was almost like having a 9/11 type, experience every day in terms of the number of things that get thrown at you, and to have that go on for a very long time. I've never gone through that previously. But like on a personal level, so again, back to my dad and how I watched him build his business and the Swedish travel business, and the way that he ran it from a financial perspective. He was always very careful in scaling and just making sure he had this right size team, but he was also aggressive from a marketing perspective at the same time. When the two met, he became extremely profitable at the same time that he was recession proof. And so what comes closest to this, I guess, was a situation in the mid-90s when my dad somehow managed to hustle his way into becoming the sole reseller of Turkish packaged holidays. This was pre-low-cost airlines, and so back then you'd have to charter a plane and fly tourists around weekly or monthly or however that works. But anyway, my dad somehow becomes the guy for these packages to go to the sun, and the phones start ringing like crazy, as you have like 2/3 of Sweden want to go to Turkey, following my dad advertising like crazy in the daily newspaper. So this thing is going viral. And this was before the internet, so this was pretty crazy. My old room when I was a kid was next to their office, so I'd hear the phones go off literally around the clock, starting in the middle of the night, and so that's why I have PTSD related to phones ringing, by the way. But that business exploded in a matter of days.
Uh-huh.
And with a very small team. I think it was like mom and dad and one person and an intern. And so they had to take the phones off the hook just to get a break. So what my dad realized then was that he needed to scale, but he didn't want to take the risk of employing a bunch of people, and the lead time for getting people in was really long. So he hired a call center to manage the flow. And in a day, he was able to manage almost unlimited volume, but with the same size team. So workflow and communications, where he might not have been ready team-wise for this surge, he definitely had the ability to just think very quickly and to implement and making tough decisions. And so I thought about this Turkey situation a lot when we went through this, and I think the decision making that we had was very influenced by his thinking, especially when we did stuff like we introduced wizards for communicating with the sales and support teams rather than sending open-ended emails. It's hard for people to express themselves sometimes in terms of what they need and want, and especially when things are really stressful. We realized that it was important to try to structure that communication so that first of all our team could go through the requests faster, but also that the customer could just feel that it would be a more structured way to communicate with us. Now, of course, the flip side to that massive Turkey situation that my dad had, just to wrap that up, is that a couple of years later, when the tour operator in question, it was a government-sponsored outfit, they shut down almost overnight, and my dad lost like 100,000 euros worth of commissions in the crash of that. He had to shut down an office that he would set up to service customers locally. And that taught me to be very careful with scaling and not going crazy with hiring new people too fast. And, really learning from the market, learning from the business situation that you're in, making fast decisions, but making smart decisions, and maybe just thinking one step ahead before hiring too many people. So we did have the call center topic up very early on, we started getting thousands of open-ended emails into the support team. But we learned from the team. That's the place where we added resources, and actually, luckily, coming into this whole search, we actually had expanded the team for sales in North America and for Germany, France. And so we expanded the support team. That's where we added. But our head of support, fantastic guy. I don't know how he survived going through this whole thing with that. It was like a wall of emails every single day, and it was just hard to get through it. But we said, let's just learn from the volume of email. Let's learn about what's in them, and let's try to find a workflow based on automation rather than hiring a call center. And that's what we did, and I think it was the right call. We did the wizards. We were able to navigate this much better, just with an additional couple of headcounts on it. So yeah, that all came back to that crazy package holidays in Turkey situation that my dad went through. I thought about that many times throughout those first 2-3 weeks of that.
I think those past experiences, whether they're your own or your family's or a colleague or a mentor, can really put you in good stead, and we can learn so much from past experience. I know I've spent a lot of time in emergency and crisis response with young people, and I was able to leverage a lot of my experience in and through that to be able to navigate some of the team challenges. That it forces you to slow down, to be calm, and I often reflect on John F. Kennedy in the Cuban Missile Crisis, who just did nothing. And sometimes that stillness as an owner and reflection, introversion, allows us to make great people decisions. As you said, we don't necessarily need to pull the trigger on HR or people resources quickly when we're in a good space because of our reflection on past experiences. So tell me then, what's next for Physitrack specifically, and what do you see from the 30,000 foot view on telehealth? What do you see next for telehealth?
Yeah, well, just starting at that end, I think telehealth took a 2-3 year leap ahead very quickly. over these last few weeks. I think telehealth is something that will be a natural part of say, the extension of care that that we will see. I think hands-on hands-on needs to be the go-to methodology for treating post-acute and for post-op, etc. There's no other choice. But I think telehealth will come in as a complement and be a pretty standard part of a clinic's offering. Mm-hmm. So I don't think, I think obviously it's not normal to have 100% of your care move online. But I think post-COVID, I think you probably see 10-20% of care being online. It could be preparation ahead of a procedure. It could be a part of the post-op. It could be part of the post-acute. I think people getting used to this and patients getting used to this, they will welcome the ability to be able to complement the hands-on care with remote stuff, because people are busy. They're in offices and they have busy family lives and so on. And so if they can replace some of the hands-on stuff with a nice interactive remote session, I think they'll be very ready to do that. So I think we took a very big leap ahead, and I think it will be with us for the foreseeable future. And we've seen governments now adjust to that digital situation with reimbursements, with legislation that's come into play, and that's making it possible for a clinic owner to actually have that as a viable business. Mm-hmm. And so I think those initiatives will be permanent, and I don't see that changing. So I think it's a great opportunity, and especially if you're based in Perth, you can actually work with your patients even as they travel up to Sydney or Melbourne, or I see a lot of things going on in the States where people go national. They can have a call center in one place, and then they can treat people in 50 states. So I think we'll see more of that stuff, mm-hmm. and more businesses adding revenue into it and being more diversified. And obviously then staffing wise, I think it could be a great situation to be in for a clinical team that does hands-on, 8-10 hours a day, than to maybe have a day a week where they can just work from home, and they can work in a digital space and do care extension via telehealth, for example. So I think it's a great way for a team just to grow into that as well, and feel more fulfilled, and to relax the body a little bit, because it's hard work to do these manual therapy sessions. Now, for us specifically for Physitrack, we've upped our investment into telehealth quite significantly, and so we're now spending or investing the equivalent of about $1 million US a year into telehealth, and that some of that has got to do with scalability and more people using it. So we're at around 250,000 therapy minutes a day now, and at some juncture we were at almost 20,000 sessions a day. Wow. For telehealth, and so that obviously puts a lot of load onto servers and the technology itself, and so we have to invest in that to just make sure it's stable and it's reliable. But we'll also see more features. We'll see more scalability. We're going to try to adapt a little bit more. We learned so much now in the last few weeks from new user profiles, especially the small to mid-sized guys that might not have an enterprise type of setup. And so I won't bore you with the detail around that. We'll be announcing a bunch of features and enhancements in the next Physitrack newsletter, which is out on Friday, I think. But most importantly, telehealth has gone from being a peripheral feature in Physitrack to being something more central. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same for our customers. I think it's been something that was potentially on people's roadmaps for development at some juncture, but I think now it's very much a day-to-day occurrence, and I think that will continue. So I think we'll have a certain percentage of treatments that will be remote as well. So we're investing in this for the long term, just to make sure that we can cater to that new normal.
Mhm. It's exciting to hear some of those features and even just that shift of peripheral to central. I think there's something in that for us as clinic owners to think, well, how do we do this from our own perspective? What is peripheral that now needs to be central? And perhaps the other direction as well. What was central that maybe we don't need to hold on so tightly to, that we can perhaps relax out on, and some of those changes for Physitrack. It's exciting. Folks, as you're listening to Henrik here, I want to know what's your learnings, whether it's from your previous experiences or from those of colleagues, mentors, as we touched on, when it comes to what's next for telehealth and what's been happening in the telehealth landscape and where it's trending towards. What are you learning? What's the key action or key takeaway for you? I'm really interested in, and Henrik, super grateful for you sharing. I'm mindful of our folks' time. Moving forward, what's really interesting, and we're going to answer any questions if we've got time at the end. So jump over in the Q&A, folks. We can answer any questions that are popped in there as time permits. I want you to think about, as a clinic owner, that where you are now, it doesn't need to be that way. If it is uncertain, it could be under control. There are lessons and there are actions that we can all take to bring certainty and control to where we are. But what we often see is that clinic owners say they want control and say they want certainty, but their actions don't often reflect that. And I think what we can see from Physitrack's example and Henrik is that they wanted to make that shift, and it wasn't just lip service, they did it. And so clinic owners, I would challenge you, if you really want to move from uncertainty to control, then your actions need to back up your words. And so we're really excited. We're looking for 9 clinic owners specifically that we can help, who are progressive, poised, and ready to make that shift in their clinic. And the way we can do that is with a practical discovery and strategy session. We can understand where your clinic's at and advise you with that next day tactical implementation, and we can physically help you put that into place in your clinic. It's not just head in the clouds fluffy stuff. It is boots on the ground. Let's make progress in your clinic. And so we have limited capacity for that, but absolutely reach out. That is how you would do so. Send me an email. Henrik, we're going to shoot over to the questions panel. Folks, I'm going to leave this here for you to see. It's kind of first in, best dressed. So if you make it into my inbox in time, we will be able to help. Let's flick over and have a look at some of those questions there now, Henrik, and see what we can learn.
Yeah. What's the best strategy to enroll? What's the best strategy to enroll patient data into telehealth? We can answer that live. I think if you have a good patient management system and electronic medical record system, then you can have an integration between that and a telehealth solution like Physitrack. So we integrate in Australia, clinical, local. We have integrations for patient data to be imported automatically into Physitrack. So that will solve it if you have a good PMS. And we have a long list of those around the world. So if you're specifically interested in Physitrack, then take a look at that list, and I'm sure we can help you regardless of where in the world you are.
So I think that the key there is making sure that you have a stable and strong PMS and a robust telehealth solution like Physitrack's. We've personally used it in our clinic. We love it and still continue to use it. Further to that, Henrik, I'd add that there is, for those specifically manual or traditionally face-to-face therapies, there is such a gap between patients' understanding of traditional therapy and telehealth. And so being the one to bridge that gap on patients' behalf, so becoming the authority and the expert and in educating your patient database is huge. And so content really is key. We need to help our clients understand so many different aspects. One, is telehealth safe? One, as in, like, is their privacy respected, and is the platform safe and secure? Is it going to work? Is it going to provide the same outcomes that hands-on or face-to-face therapy would provide? How does it work? What is it going to be on the phone? Like, most people having bad GP experiences on the phone or on other platforms that are not secure, direct on things like their phone, etc. So how is it physically going to work? So answering some of those questions for our patients will mean their hesitation to enrolling in a telehealth session is reduced. And what we do know is that once patients have their first telehealth consult, they're far more likely to re-engage. We just got to get them over that first hump. And so education, written, video, audio, distributed across different mediums like email and social media, out through partnerships and network databases, is absolutely critical to you becoming the authority in telehealth delivery, which can then extend beyond just your local geography. So you can transition your existing database into telehealth. It also gives you opportunities to add new databases into your telehealth delivery options. So I trust that answers that question there for you. Thank you for asking that. Henrik, I am mindful of time and folks that have stuck around. We will make sure that everyone here in attendance and watching on the replay has the opportunity to connect with Physitrack. We'll provide those links, make sure they're able to get in touch. Any parting words of wisdom or advice, Henrik?
No, I mean, I think just stay safe. We will be out of this lockdown soon. I know Australia is opening up and a lot of places. New Zealand is opening up as well, and we'll see that over the next few weeks. When you're out there, just get ready for a big surge. I think people will be delighted to see you again. If you're a therapist, and I think this is going to be a very, very welcome situation for them to actually have you take care of them hands-on again.
Absolutely agree. We are primed to get in the right position for May, June, July to go absolutely bananas as clinic owners utilizing the brilliant platform that is Physitrack. So folks, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll make sure we distribute the recording for you. Henrik, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to bringing you another webinar again really soon. Bye for now.
Bye guys. Bye Jack.